Hello, I'm Bob Ganzak. This is Motivation U, the podcast. Welcome to Motivation U, the podcast, coming to you live from Spurrier's Gridiron Grill right here at Celebration Point. My name is Bob Ganzak, and this is a program about leadership. We try to search for people's leadership styles and techniques, or great leaders that they've worked with and or for. And today we continue that search with a good friend of mine, gentleman who runs the Lake City Columbia County Chamber of Commerce Executive Director, Mr. Joey O'Hearn. Joey, welcome to Motivation U, the podcast. Glad to have you here today.
Thank you, sir. I'm glad to be here. As I tell people, you're one of my favorite people. Every time I leave from speaking with you, I don't know if I feel a little bit dumber or a little bit smarter, but it's always a great experience.
I appreciate that, Joey. And Joey, tell our audience, how long have you been with the Lake City Chamber of Commerce?
I have a weird journey with the chamber. So I started out as a chamber member, became a chamber ambassador. I came on as a subcontractor in early 2020, right before the pandemic. I actually joined the chamber team in the middle of the pandemic, and I just celebrated on June 8th was my 2-year anniversary of actually being on staff here.
Awesome. That is great. I remember that whole process, and there were so many ups and downs that went through that. And what was that like as an individual you live in that town, the individual that you replaced, she left to go to New Hampshire, I think, if I remember correctly, or
Correct.
Vermont.
So, Teresa Pinto was my predecessor. She was here for a little bit, did a lot of great work here. Teresa had been in the chamber world for about 25, 30 years and kind of just said, I've done all I can do. It's time for me to go back home. So Teresa left about May of last year. We went without an executive director for about 6 months. The board did a nationwide search. As an organization, we didn't have great luck with that because it really is a community. You have to know the people, you have to know the players at the table and be able to adapt and kind of fit into how things are done around here while also trying to advance the organization. So then last fall, after talking to some mentors and some close friends and some chamber investors, I thought, why not apply? If I get it, great. If I don't, I'm still going to be here. It's a win-win for myself personally and professionally either way.
And that was an interesting time also, because it is tough. I mean, if you think of working within an organization, let's say you start at a company as a salesperson, and
Right.
then all of a sudden they elevate you from the sales staff to sales manager. That's a tough dynamic. Now the people that were your peers, your teammates, you're now their supervisor. That's tough. And the similar thing that happened here to you as being a citizen of the area, growing up in the area, the greater area, of course, and then being a business person, a member of the chamber, an ambassador, and now all of a sudden you're on the hot seat as the executive director. That
Right.
had to be a tough climb.
Tough, but grateful. I mean, I tell people, and humbly I say this, one of my strengths is I've seen the organization from every facet, from just a member to an invested volunteer to now being a staff person to leading the organization. So I have a different lens where I've really seen it all from everybody's viewpoint. That's always beneficial. I tell people the good side and the bad side about working for a nonprofit organization like a chamber is I have 434 bosses, and I get a new boss at the helm every year. So it's always nice because there's always a different viewpoint, but there's a lot of people to be responsible to and for. And I'm very lucky for that. That's one of the reasons I love the job. It's the people aspect. But yeah, kind of a different trajectory to get here. I'm very grateful. I love every single moment of it. I tell people, and it's the truth, I've been here for now 2 years. There has not been a single day that I have not woken up excited and ready to go to work.
The way that your community is growing, you better have that that
Yeah.
attitude because it's growing so fast. You've been involved. So you grew up in Lake Butler, which is just outside of Lake City,
Right.
and you've been involved with the chamber for a number of years. What does it feel like with the business growth? It's just the stores, the shops, the malls, the businesses that are coming to Lake City. The growth has been huge, huge, and I'm sure there's more on the horizon. What has that been like over the last 5, 7 years?
Yeah, it's been exponential. I mean, I can tell you, I moved from Lake Butler to Lake City 30 minutes in 2015, and driving down Highway 90 in that now 7 year time frame, the amount of things that I can drive down 90 and say that wasn't here when I got here, that wasn't here, and that's new, and that's new. And I've only been here 7 years, so you can only imagine the people who have really grown up. From birth till now in this community, the change they've seen. Lake City and Columbia County is that like sweet spot. We're the only county where 75 and I-10 interchange. We're centrally located. We're 40 minutes north of Gator Nation. We're an hour from Jacksonville. We're an hour and a half from Tallahassee. We're an hour from Valdosta. So we really are that sweet spot, which is quite the selling point for either big manufacturers or honestly just small businesses who are trying to get started. I love change. I know change is often a hard pill to swallow and a controversial topic, but that's one of the reasons I think Lake City and Columbia County are great because we are growing, we are expanding, but we still have that down home, everybody knows everybody, country, family atmosphere for our community.
Well, I've been spending my time in Lake City since about 2000. So the last 20, 22 years, I've been in and around the community quite a bit. And I can remember when you went west of I-75 on 90, you got a quarter of a mile past, there was nothing there.
Right.
And the diversity of the people that you've brought, medical, manufacturing, how are you keeping that blend so strong? And what is attracting people other than I-10 and I-75? What is attracting people and companies to come there to Lake City?
It's a great question. So the chamber does not oversee economic development officially, I guess you could say. We're obviously a partner at the table. We're a big partner with the county who does. We laugh because our current office, we're in the middle of moving, is located downtown. And we get a lot of foot traffic in our doors that people say, we're moving to Lake City. I always laugh and I'd say, how did you find Lake City? And the amount of people who say, well, we were going down 75 and we just got off. Like, well, I guess that works for you. I think from a personal and professional point of view, people like Lake City because it's centrally located. People that move from the north say we wanted to move to Florida. Lake City's great. It has all the amenities that we need. It's centrally located and we're not worried about hurricanes. From a professional point of view, companies like Lake City because it's centrally located. You've got great access to 75. You've got great access to I-10. And Columbia County is really doing a lot of work to put in the infrastructure to make sure that even more manufacturers and more large companies have a place to come to if they're looking to move down south.
That's fascinating. Did I catch that you said that your chamber office is moving?
We are. So we are currently in, and we do love it. We are currently in a 100-year-old home, and the chamber has been here since I believe 1995. This year, the chamber bought a new office, kind of south of us. So we're in between two chamber members actually, and we're currently renovating a dentist office. We hope to be in September, but renovations are underway, so it's a process.
Wow, I've spent so much time in that office that you're in. It's
Yeah.
I'll be sad to see that go. Yet,
And we do love this facility. I love it. I love old homes. But we calculated it up and we went to about 300 meetings in 2021 that were either our board meetings, ambassador meetings, committees, et cetera, that are our own meetings outside of office. So one thing when we were looking for a new facility was to have an office that had a conference/meeting area so we could move all of our meetings in house, as well as do leadership programs and business trainings and those sort of things that we can't due to our full potential because we are so reliant on other members giving us their spaces.
And I always could tell with, didn't matter if it was Daniil or Teresa or yourself, when you're coming out of your office, you can always hear those floorboards squeak coming down the steps. So
yeah, it's a beautiful home, but like I tell people, I'm like, we love this place. At the end of the day, it's what's supposed to be a home and nothing more. And we've just been lucky enough to have it for the last, 35-ish years, I think. We're excited for a new office that we'll be able to expand our services, our programs, and what we can do for our members.
That's awesome, Joey. Now, you mentioned a leadership program, something that I've been blessed to be involved in with you in the past. Share with us, when does your leadership program start? How does people get involved in it? And what is the content and how have you built that?
For sure. So the Chamber does a program called Leadership Lake City. It is supposed to be every other year. So we were going to bring it back last year this time, and COVID kind of got a little bit scary again. So we pushed it to 2022. Leadership Lake City is an 8-week program. And I like to tell people it's a behind the scenes look at what makes Lake City and Columbia County a great place to live, work, and play. I can tell you the last time the Chamber did Leadership Lake City was in 2019. That was my class, and I was grateful to have Bob be a part of that class. And I tell people I did Leadership Lake City because at the time my boss was like, you should go do it. It'll be great. I'll pay for it. I was not thrilled. I was like, I don't have time to carve out a day a week for 8 weeks. It was the best thing ever. I tell people Leadership Lake City is one of the coolest things we do all year long, because again, you really do get a behind the scenes look of how your community runs, things that I had no idea about. And on a personal note, a lot of my great friends I met during Leadership Lake City. So it's an 8-week program. It's a day a week for 8 weeks, and every day is dedicated to a different sector. So one day is all about healthcare, one day is all about education, economy, tourism and agriculture, manufacturing, and so on. And in between that, we do leadership trainings throughout. So we try to sprinkle in some leadership development skills throughout. So it's more of a benefit to those who are participating.
That is great. And I will also say, I want to thank the Chamber. They've been very much involved in helping me bring Dale Carnegie training to the Columbia County region. So it's always been a great partnership there, which I really appreciate. You mentioned healthcare. You have had enormous growth in the healthcare industry in the last 5-7 years. Just I know Jill Adams would be very upset at me right now because I can't remember HCA Florida Lake City. Am I?
I believe. I was going to say, I don't want Jill to come after me because I know they have worked hard to get everybody to transition. I believe it's HCA Florida Healthcare Lake City Hospital.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
And I could be wrong. Listen, I love the hospital staff and Jill. I was never called to work in the medical industry. That is not my wheelhouse, but we are big fans of theirs, and they're fantastic partners of the Chamber.
Well, when you're bringing people in and you're getting people involved, it's nice to have companies like that have shown growth, that visual, just how large the hospital has become is amazing. Just amazing.
Yeah, and I mean, one thing we did recently here at the Chamber is start a healthcare leads group, which is a networking group just for those in the healthcare industry, because locally we didn't have anything like that. And that's the Chamber's job, is to find those gaps and fill those needs. And just to hear, again, as somebody who knows nothing about healthcare, the amount of services that we have locally that a lot of people locally think they have to travel out of town for, but we're blessed here in Lake City to have the best of the best providing services that a lot of people don't even realize are accessible to them.
When you talk about your leadership, Lake City, what are the growth potentials for a young person or even a seasoned professional to go through that program?
Great question. I can tell you when I went through it as, I don't want to say an obligation or formality, but because at the time my boss said, just do it. And I was blessed in more ways than one. From a professional point of view, my Rolodex greatly expanded. From a personal point of view, I have great friends. A mutual friend of ours, Abby Rocco, I met through Leadership Lake City. Abby is one of my great friends and the greatest support of the chamber. But also just really opening your eyes to your community. There are a lot of times you see things in the papers or on Facebook that you may think without knowing, well, why was that decision made? How does that work? Why are they doing that? And when you get a behind the scenes look and really a completely transparent viewpoint on it, it really does change your perspective about the community. One thing I love about Leadership Lake City is it's great at recognizing the next generation of leaders or current leaders who we have not tapped into their potential. With my class, I can tell you, every time we went somewhere, there seemed to be an underlying theme of there was a severe lack of mental health services in Columbia County. And my class really took that as a passion project and began to really advocate for more services, focusing on mental health in our community. So, I mean, there are a lot of benefits. A lot of people go through it because it strengthens their own personal leadership skills. A lot of people go through it because they want to know, how does the county and the city work behind the scenes? A lot of people go through it because they're looking to increase their personal network. It does kind of cover all those bases in one way or another, depending on what you're looking for. I'm happy to say when you look back at the 30 plus years of our leadership program, the names of people on those lists are your elected officials, your business leaders, your community leaders, your community advocates, those who are well connected to nonprofits and other civic organizations who are really working towards the change to make the community what they want to live in.
That's well said, and I appreciate you sharing that with us. We're talking with Joey O'Hearn, the executive director of the Lake City Columbia County Chamber of Commerce. And, Joey, I look educationally, you went and got your associate's of degree like 2010, early
Right.
in the decade. And then you came back, went to the University of Florida and got your bachelor's degree. How difficult was that to split that education up that far apart?
That's a great question. So yeah, I got my associate's degree here in Lake City at Florida Gateway College. And at that point, to be honest with you, I was fresh in my 20s. And though I thought I knew everything and had life figured out, when you are paying for your own education and you don't have everything figured out, you think we should probably put a pause until I know what I really want to do. I fell into the nonprofit world. I worked for another nonprofit for about 10 years before I came to the chamber. And at that point, I came to the chamber and realized I did want to go back and get my bachelor's degree. In the chamber world, actually last week, I was at a professional development training. A lot of chambers really struggle with telling their story to their members, telling their story to potential members, and really knowing their story. So taking that into account and also having a little bit of dabbling in the marketing PR world, I thought, why not go back to school? I had a lot of free time because I have nothing else going on, and thought now's a good time to go back to school and pursue my bachelor's. I did a lot of research for online programs and ended up at the University of Florida. I have not regretted a single moment of it. It's the best education you could possibly get, quite honestly, for the price. A lot of people kind of think online degrees, it's not the same experience. It's been nothing but fantastic to me.
That is great. That is awesome. What was it like growing up in Lake Butler? For people that are outside of the Florida region or even north central Florida, Lake Butler is just this little blip on the map. And I mean, you can cruise through it in 2 seconds.
Right.
What was
So
it
yeah,
like growing up there?
so Lake Butler, if you don't know of it, Lake Butler is in the smallest county in the state of Florida. It's still a very small town. Probably a year ago, 2 years ago, they just got a McDonald's, and that was quite the seismic shift for that community. I loved every moment of it. Listen, it was a small community. I was in a graduating class of 99 people. I tell people I can tell you every single person I graduated with and probably their middle name because we were so small and so tight knit as a group. It's funny because I have a contact who's a school board member there, and I believe 2 or 3 years ago, the school district hired somebody to do like a community assessment strategic plan, and they interviewed a portion of faculty, staff, and students, and they said, "What's the one word that you describe the Union County school system like?" And every single person said, "It's a family." And that really is the best way to describe Lake Butler. My family is still there. Both my parents, sisters, nieces, nephews, they're all still in Lake Butler. I still love it. It's a great, fantastic community. And I've met a lot of great people through Lake Butler. And Lake Butler's done a lot of great things with its citizens going out there. A lot of great leaders, great athletes. Overall, it's a pretty fantastic community to raise a family in.
So what is the Lake Butler like?
It's a lake. It's got a great park. I can say that. It really is like the hub of the community. I believe they just had their 4th of July festivities, of course, at the lake. My dad actually lives right down from the lake, so it's within walking distance. It's a great park.
That's good. That's good. You mentioned leadership. Your leadership journey, who were some of the people that influenced you back in the Lake Butler days when you were going through, middle school and high school? Who were some of those individuals that really influenced your leadership thought process moving forward?
For sure. So throughout high school, and let me say, Union County has a fantastic school district. All the teachers are top notch. I had 2 teachers who stood out. One's name was Tom Williams. We called him Bub. He was my high school agriculture teacher. I was a big FFA guy, and the amount of wisdom and leadership that he poured into not just me, but all of his students in that short time frame was pretty impactful. And the second one, and she knows this because I've said it before, her name is Jamie Jekyll. She was my high school geometry and yearbook teacher. And I credit her to getting me into the PR world because I would come into her geometry class, not even yearbook class where it would make more sense, and talk about anything I saw in the news the day before. And finally, at one point, and I've told people this story before, at one point, she just knew I was never going to stop talking. And she said, "I will give you 2 minutes at the start of class to get this out of your system, and then you have to be quiet." So she's a little bit of the grassroots start of my PR passion and I guess to some degree career.
Describe your leadership style. How would you, if you were giving a 30-second elevator speech to somebody about your leadership style, describe that to us?
That's a great question. I would have to say that I am pretty great at being able to read the energy of people. Like I said, I did a leadership training last week. It's a 4-year program. And that was one thing that a lot of us talked about is knowing your staff. For instance, I've worked with other nonprofits with other staff. For me, words of affirmation don't mean much. If you tell me I did a good job, that's very kind of you. That's not what keeps me going. Recognition from leadership, however, does. So I think one thing that's when it comes to my leadership style is also knowing how staff receive that affirmation, but also empowering staff. We've got a great team here. We pride ourselves on everybody knows their job. It's not really a micromanaged atmosphere at all, because ultimately we want to assemble a team that everybody's great at what they do and know how to do it with very little supervision. So leadership style, I think it changes. I think it changes depending on who you're surrounding yourself with. Some staff members that I've worked with here and then other jobs sometimes need a little bit more handholding. Some I have to check to see if they've even gone home for the night because they're workaholics. But I think I'm great at knowing people's strengths, empowering them, keeping them engaged, and ultimately making them feel a part of the team. I don't know how you feel, Bob. I feel like there's been a seismic shift, honestly, since the pandemic, of that people want to be involved with things that are doing good things and not just clocking in 9 to 5. And that's one thing we empower ourselves on here and really engage with our volunteers and our staff is you were part of something much greater than what's happening in this office from 9 to 4.
That's a great way to look at that, Joey. I really applaud you for those thoughts. How big has your staff grown now?
So we are technically, I like to say 2.5. So there's myself. I'm the executive director here. Missy Hartley is our member services director. She's fantastic. Lourdes Brooks is our admin and project manager. We have an open position, so technically we would be 3.5. And then we have a part-time CPA who comes in 1 day a week and keeps us on track.
And you also have a board of directors that you have to report to, and
For sure.
and that sometimes gets to be a challenge also because each one of those individuals is usually a leader in their own right, so they like to give advice, and all of a sudden if you've got 8 people on the board, you have 8 different people trying to tell you how to run your office. I'm not saying that they do that there, not at all.
Not at all.
Who is the president of the board now?
Yeah, so we're not-for-profit organization, so we're governed by a board, 13 board members. Our current president is Steve Smith of Edward Jones. Our president-elect is Dr. Larry Barrett of Florida Gateway College. Boards are always interesting. Boards are always tricky. Talking to counterparts at other chambers, some people are like, we don't want our board involved. We just need them there to help us. I'm different. Like you just said, Bob, we have 13 board members. Most of them are either the owner or top level executive at their job. I'm happy to have 13 of the smartest people in the room to say, what's your viewpoint? How would you do this? Do you have any experience with this? Because ultimately, I'm just doing the will of the board and the work of the organization. Those 13 are elected by their fellow members to represent them. So we are happy to tap into their expertise in more ways than one.
Well, that is great because it becomes a political position also, and you have to play that politics, and that's a great way to look at that. Is I sit in this seat, and I'll take your direction.
Right.
And sometimes their politics get involved also. The history of Columbia County Lake City has not always been smooth, put it that way. And you mentioned earlier the economic development side of it and the chamber side of it used to be together, then they separated that. How is the city and the county working together now to help grow the region?
Great question. Obviously, it's no mystery that the city is going through a lot of transition. It's been very public. The county and the city have to work together. That's the truth of the matter. I've told people before, when you have places like healthcare facilities or manufacturing companies say, we struggle to get top level talent into Columbia County, we all have to be working together. Ultimately, a rising tide lifts all boats. And if we want more boats in the tide, quite honestly, to raise the quality of life, we all have to be on the same team, on the same playing field, and really all working on the same plan. So the county and city are working together. As far as I know, they're doing a good job at it. I know they're collaborating a lot when it comes to infrastructure at the industrial park and a few other sites to ensure that when those mega companies do want to come to Lake City, that it really is a shovel-ready site that they can start working immediately and not wait for infrastructure to be put in. The county, who oversees economic development, has gone through a few changes lately, but that staff is fantastic. It's well-staffed, and we are very excited to work with them on some upcoming projects and really be an ally and a partner for when it comes to economic development. Because ultimately, when the county and the city grow, our members benefit from it and our organization grows.
We're going to take a short break here in a minute just to bring in some commercials, but I want to go back to that, what you were just talking about, the county and the city, and how your leadership is molded, or just the pressures that are on you in those situations. But this is Motivation U, the podcast, coming to you live from Spurrier's Gridiron Grill inside the coach's podcast room, which is just an absolutely beautiful facility. My friend out there, Josh Vaughn, is keeping this place absolutely clean. Josh was our guest last week on the podcast, just a wonderful man. And this is just, Joey, I don't know if you've been here yet. If you haven't, you got to take that little drive down I-75 and come visit Spurrier's Gridiron Grill.
I actually did a podcast there 2 weeks ago, I think. And we went there last Friday night, my wife and I, for a date night. Not only is the food incredible, I've told this to more people that probably care to listen. Spurrier's is a beautiful restaurant. Like, the design is top. I mean, it's a gorgeous, well-designed, beautiful restaurant. So the food's great, but the restaurant is beautiful. But yeah.
Awesome. We'll be right back after this. Thank you.
We still hear it. The sound of victory. The joy of being part of something great. And while things may not be the same right now, we haven't gone anywhere. If you bleed orange and blue, then Meldon Law is the firm for you.
Looking for more reasons to celebrate? We have them here at Celebration Point. Enjoy some of the newest additions to our already celebratory lineup, like Dave & Buster's, Les Macarons, and Prime and Pearl. There's always a reason to celebrate. Join us anytime for any occasion. Celebration Point, where Gators come to celebrate.
Steve Spurrier here. You know, making a reservation at my restaurant is easier than a Saturday afternoon homecoming game against Vandy. You don't have to call or email. Just go to spurriers.com, hit the reservation button, pick a date, a number of guests, and a time. It's so simple, I can do it. In fact, I just did. Maybe I'll see you tonight.
All right, back to the program here. Welcome to Motivation U, the podcast. My name is Bob Ganzak. Our guest today is Joey O'Hearn. Joey is from the Lake City, Columbia County Chamber of Commerce, Executive Director. Not an easy role when you have so much change going on in the city and you have a county that is driving forward, growing fast, and the city sometimes holds you back. What is that political, piece of cartilage that you are in between those? What are the pressures on you now, Joey, and how are you handling them?
For sure. So the chamber likes to jokingly say that we're always Switzerland. We are not a government entity, so we're allowed to be neutral at all times. But ultimately, when it comes to local economic development, our community needs to be a possibility for companies and manufacturers and the mega sites and the mega companies. So the chamber does a pretty good job at staying neutral in the middle of all the transition and change and challenges, but also it's our job to advocate for our members. So like I said, we now sit on the Economic Development Advisory Board with the county. So we literally have a seat at the table to kind of say, this may not be great for our members, this may not be great for the community, et cetera. Of course, we continue to be a support for the city and a support for the county whenever we're needed. We work well with the city. We do a lot of events downtown, so we've got great community partners at the city that we work well with. The city, of course, is, like I said, is going through a transition. It's pretty public. It's in the papers that we're currently looking for a new city manager, and hopefully we have one in the near future. If I recall correctly, I think they decided this week to hire a new search firm, and hopefully we'll have somebody at the helm soon. While Lake City is a great place to live, work, and play, you can really only do so much without a full-time person at the helm. We do have an interim city manager who's doing a fantastic job, making a lot of great changes to better the city, but ultimately until somebody can get in there full-time and it'd be their sole focus, our potential is a little bit capped at the moment.
Who is that individual that is acting city manager now?
Paul Dial, he's doing a fantastic job.
Fantastic.
I believe maybe he's been in there 6 to 8 months. I don't know how accurate that is. It's not been long, but in that time frame, he's made some great changes and done a lot of really great things for the city. But also, I mean, he also has another full-time job with the city. And I can only assume, having not spoken to him directly, that you can only do so much when you're really juggling running the city and running your own department. So hopefully we'll have somebody full-time as a city manager in the near future.
And, the challenge that you have is that the people that are chamber members are citizens of the community. And if they're upset with the community, it's usually you and your staff that kind of gets the brunt of that from the businesses, because they align you with the city, yet you're something totally different. How are you handling that?
For sure. I mean, ultimately, our job as a chamber is to be an advocate and a voice for our members. A lot of times that's not a very public movement. That's not a very vocal movement. A lot of times that's private, and not even private, but more of a one-on-one connection. I can tell you I've had great meetings with people at the city and the county to say, hey, here are some concerns that are being brought to us. Can you either work with us to fix those concerns, or can you kind of explain in greater detail why that is, so that we can start relaying that to our members? Again, infrastructure is a big hot topic here, making sure that when mega companies come, we're ready. We hear a lot of things on our end of, why are we not ready? These sites should be ready to go. And so we've done a really great job of working with the county to kind of get answers for that we can then take back and kind of say, okay, well, if you guys need this, our members can provide this. Let's figure out how we can work together to make it all happen. Or there have been times where we've heard from those in government saying, hey, here's the holdup and there's nothing we can do about it. And we relayed that message. So we try to do a good job not only advocating for our members, but also being able to kind of help the city and the county tell their message a little bit better to our members. Like, here's why things may be taking a little bit longer. Here's what's coming down the pipeline. It's all great things, but I mean, it goes without saying, it's a process to everything. Mm-hmm.
And your media in the area, you don't have a major television station,
right?
Some of the television stations around Tallahassee, Gainesville, Jacksonville, they give you a second of time,
right.
Basically. You've got some radio stations, yet, radio has diversified so much that their news teams are not as large as they once were. and you have the Lake City Reporter, which that has to be a challenge for Todd and his staff too, because you have to work with them and they've got to work with the city and the county. So how is that relationship?
For sure. We're grateful for the Reporter and all other local news outlets. WCJB TV20 is based in Gainesville, so north of us, but we're south of us. We're still a great partner of theirs. They're a great partner of ours. The good thing about today's digitally driven world is there are more opportunities to take control of telling your own story on your own platforms. We're getting much better at that at the chamber. When things get crazy, I hate to say it, but when things get crazy, complimenting yourself has a tendency to fall to the wayside. But that's one thing we're committed to doing, is not only telling people outside of the organization what the chamber is doing, but also telling our members, like, hey, here's what's happening. We want to keep you informed internally with what's happening with the organization and opportunities for your business to grow and succeed, but also do a whole lot more of, here's what's happening externally that's going to affect your business. We hear it every day, every single day. Our members are understaffed. I joke with our members that I'll just start taking shifts at all their places of employment to help fill some gaps because everybody's hiring. So they don't have time to have their finger on the pulse of the community. And that's where the chamber has to step in and step up and kind of say, hey, real quick, here's what's happening. We're just keeping you up to date. If anything changes, we'll let you know. We do a great job with that when it comes to state level politics. During when the legislative session, we're going to really start investing more locally to say, here's what's happening on the local front, how it affects you as a business owner and how it affects our organization.
That is fantastic. That is fantastic. Your world with the chamber has been, so much a challenge from the standpoint of COVID. And then, hey, let's throw in that somebody got married right during that time, So your personal world has been, a challenge. What was it like coming in and taking over during that COVID period?
Well, so I came in just as a staff member in early 2020, and I became the executive director October of last year. I like to tell people I was hired in 2020 to oversee all chamber events, and then in 2020 we canceled all chamber events. So I got to just hang out and clean my office for about a year, and then 2021. It was full throttle. Teresa was with us for about the first half of the year before she departed. So in the middle of all that chaos, on a personal note, I was getting married. I have the best wife ever. We actually have, I like to say, we have fantastic chamber spouses. Our spouses are unofficial chamber employees. So we always count them in. It's like the volunteer count of like, yeah, my wife Lauren will be there. She'll work a registration table. We'll put it to work. So far, she has not complained. She's always great at grounding me of saying, at the end of the day, nobody cares what color the silverware was at chamber ball. You have to move on. But she is fantastic. And we have great chamber spouses across the board. Even our ambassadors, we have ambassadors who are fantastic, who have great spouses that we count as volunteers. We're like, she'll come, as will her husband, put them on the list. So it's a great blessing to have a great support system, both personally and professionally.
People might ask, like, Bob, why are you spending so much time on a small town like Lake City in the state of Florida and talking about leadership? Well, what people don't realize is that small towns like Lake City, Florida, really drive our country. I mean, there are New York City, Chicago, LA, Houston, they all get the big headlines. Yet there are so many small towns, and we could erase Lake City and write in another number, and they're going through the same challenges.
Right.
So this is America. This is what is going on in our communities. When we have a Dale Carnegie class, these are the stories that we hear, these challenges that are going on. So I appreciate, Joey, you being here with us and share these thoughts and how we get through this. One of the things that you said, you were on a podcast a couple of weeks ago, that I believe that was the Meldon Law podcast. Was that?
Yeah.
And Meldon Law has now opened an office. Good friends of mine Jeffrey and Carrie Meldon, partners in the firm, wonderful people, just do a fantastic job. They really, Jeffrey Meldon and the whole firm is kind of like the head cheerleaders for the Gator Nation here in the Gainesville area. What do you think attracts companies that like are in middle markets, medium markets like Gainesville to also open up offices in your community? What is that allure to them?
I think ultimately it's potential. I don't want to speak for the team at Meldon Law, though I'm big fans of theirs. They did a lot of research before they came to Lake City and Columbia County, a lot of research, and they saw the potential. If you look at our census numbers, we have the potential to grow exponentially by 2030. I believe it's another 25 to 30,000 people. Personally, I think we'll exceed that. Just the amount of foot traffic that we get into our office of people moving into the area, there's a lot of potential. If you're looking to start a business, taxes are low. If you're looking to build a business, land is cheap. And again, it's potential and accessibility. You really cannot beat our location. And a lot of people, I think, are seeing that. Not to mention, from a community point of view, it's a really supportive community. I'm always proud of our members. I say lovingly beat this into our members of do business with your fellow members. And our members are great at that. So it's a very supportive community. They're very loyal to each other. And I think people see that on top of that potential of Columbia County and kind of want to get into it before it does get a little bit too crazy. And again, I mean, it goes without saying, but COVID changed everything. We now have top level executives who are running companies far away from Lake City, but they want to be in Lake City on the Springs or by a body of water because they can run their companies 2,000 miles away. So I think it all goes back to the potential that this area has.
Where do you think the growth, you talked about infrastructure, which is, State Road 90 going right through town is, we've watched it get wider and wider and wider. There has to be another area that's going to pop up right in your general area. Where do you see that happening?
For sure. I know the city and the county are working diligently to expand infrastructure services to State Road 47 and I-75. I can tell you that is my neck of the woods. I live in that area. And there's so much potential for that area. I know there are investors looking at it. I know there are investors who have put their money where their mouth is to get that area up and going. But also Ellisville. As crazy as it sounds, Ellisville, I believe it's 441 and 75. They've seen great growth in the last 5 years. They've got a massive Love's truck stop. They're adding more utilities in that area, so it's a little bit easier for more businesses to get connected. I would not be shocked to see Ellisville and the 47 exit really explode the next 10 years. Like you mentioned, listen, I love Lake City, but Highway 90 is maxed out. It gets crazier and crazier to the point that a lot of those Ellisville and 47 are going to have to start to expand and grow and take off to somewhat alleviate the pressure of Highway 90.
So 47 is what, one exit south of State Road 90?
And then, and then the exit before that is Ellisville.
Okay. What happens north of I-10? Because that's a big part of your community too. Do you see growth going that way at all?
I think it's possible. I know there is some developments, I believe, closer to I-10 that are still waiting on some infrastructure. You never know. I mean, at some point, I would not be shocked to see that because, again, I think 90 is quite a learning lesson. 90 is pretty maxed out, and at some point, I would like to think that the 47 Ellisville exits will kind of reach their potential, and that we'll start investing more and more towards I-10.
You're the big city for that area.
Right.
You're the big city. And what is the relationship like with the Live Oak, which is about a half hour west of you, a small, old southern town, just like Lake City, just maybe a little bit more, a little more moss on the trees. Let's put it that way.
Right.
What is your relationship as the Lake City Chamber with the Live Oak Chamber, Suwannee County Chamber of Commerce?
Honestly, there's not much relationship, and we'll take responsibility for that. The chamber, since I've been here, has gone through a lot of transition. COVID obviously drastically changed how we do everything. From a relationship point of view, it was always interesting because when COVID came, it was don't touch anybody, don't get near anybody. And I very early said, that's not going to work for long because we're in the South and we like to hug everybody we see. And then last year, with the change of leadership of one leader stepping out and myself being put in, it's been a little bit crazy. I feel like we're starting to settle out. But to bring it back to the Suwannee County Chamber, they do great things. I know they're very invested in their community. They're also a small team, so we're a little bit relate on that. One thing we're doing here is I'm calling them chamber field trips to make them more exciting for the staff. We are starting to set up field trips to other chambers that we are either near or like to emulate some of their successes. And Suwannee County is on that list. We're doing one at a time just for our own scheduling sake. And we'd love to collaborate with them more. Listen, at the end of the day, we're all in the same area. I keep saying it, but if the tide rises, it's going to lift all boats. And to some degree, we all have to collaborate to make sure that our general greater region thrives. It's always interesting to me when you think of somewhere like Tampa, or excuse me, Hillsborough County. They probably have 3 to 6 chambers in one county. We're the sole chamber here. They're the sole chamber there. And obviously we have a lot that we could probably work better on, to be very honest and transparent with you.
I appreciate that honesty. I never get anything but that from you, Joey, and I really admire you for that.
Thank you.
One of the things that we look at is that, there's cities like Jacksonville who like dwarf over a Lake City, and yet your role becomes difficult because you're connecting to the larger towns, but also other people look up to you. Some of these smaller towns look up to you, so that that's got to be a challenge. And I appreciate you taking it upon yourself, saying that you need to work with them. But there's a huge amount of responsibility in your role. I mean, every business in the community that is a member of the chamber looks to you for your leadership. How are you dealing with that? How do you handle that?
I weirdly like pressure. It makes me work harder. One thing I will say about our staff, and I say this proudly, I will compliment ourselves, is we do a fantastic job. We have 434 members. We do a fantastic job at making every single chamber member feel like they're the only chamber member that we have, that they get every bit of our attention. And ultimately, listen, I tell people join the chamber for 2 reasons. They either want something from the chamber or through the chamber. Those that want something through the chamber are just investing because they know it trickles down to either their fellow member or to their community. There are some businesses that need us. We are their PR firm. We are their marketing agency. We are their HR department. We do a lot for them. Ultimately, and we pride ourselves on this, if somebody's going to join the chamber and they say, I need X, Y, and Z, and we have to look them in the face and say, I'm sorry, we only offer A, B, and C. I'm not here to take your money to take your money. So there is pressure to make sure that everybody is thriving and doing well, because ultimately we want to be a healthy organization that people see a great return on their investment, not just a return, but a great return. But ultimately, we know what we're good at. We know what we can do. We know what we should do and could do for our members. And so there's no pressure of thinking we're not going to meet their needs that they're expecting, because we're very upfront what we can and cannot do for them. And people know that. And I think they are happy to know that, hey, these people are not just taking my money. They know, hey, I'm investing and they're going to return the investment.
It's kind of ironic or a little bit funny that I live in Valdosta, Georgia, and there was a time back probably 5, 6, 7 years ago that I would see many of my students from Lake City in stores in Valdosta, where they would come up to the TJ Maxx or to the mall there, or for different reasons. Now, there are many times when I'm down in Lake City where I'm maybe at Dick's Sporting Goods or or one of the other businesses where I'm running into people from Valdosta, because you have so many outlets that we don't have, and we're supposedly that bigger city, right?
Right.
Yet, you're becoming a hub at the infantile stages, but you're becoming a hub for commerce in
For
North,
sure. I mean,
North Florida.
we're a little bit lucky. We're not officially the first stop in Florida, but we are kind of like the first city you see when you're coming into Florida down 75, and we get a lot of traffic off that. Talking about growing up in Lake Butler, it's funny because when I grew up in the 90s in Lake Butler, we had to go to Gainesville for everything. And now seeing my family, my friends who still live in Lake Butler, the amount of people who are now coming to Lake City for everything because it's closer, it's more convenient, and it has every amenity you may need compared to some of the larger cities that surround us. So, I mean, it has changed even in the 7 years I've been here. I can tell you changes are still coming, changes are still developing. And ultimately, all around, it's making it an even better place to work, live, and play.
Well, I've moved a lot in my life. The broadcast industry, kept me going from different place to different place, and so I was moving my family many times. And the thing that we looked at first was, usually school systems, places of worship, hospitals, and Lake City checks all those boxes, and
I mean,
that's
ultimately
vitally important.
I tell people, as basic as it sounds, you ultimately want to live somewhere that you want to live. And Lake City has that. Listen, we've got fantastic parks. We have fantastic springs and freshwater tourist attractions. We've got great shopping. We've got great places of worship. We've got great healthcare. We have great entertainment. We've got fantastic grocery stores. It really does have everything that you need.
Hotels
I like to
too. Hotels.
We have
you
great hotels. I will say we have fantastic hotels. And it's always funny. The chamber gets a lot of those phone calls of, we're thinking about moving to Lake City. And I like to tell people I am 12 minutes from the heart of Lake City, which I call Highway 90. So I like to say I'm 12 minutes from amenities, but I'm still tucked away in the country where it's still quiet. And that really is like the best benefit. You still have that rural life to where your neighbors are nearby, but not on top of you, but you've still got great amenities that are easily accessible.
Almost an hour ago, we touched on the leadership Lake City, and we have about 2 minutes left, maybe less than 2 minutes. Let people know how they can join and where they sign up, and a website that they can go to, and what the cost of that program is for them if you still have availabilities.
So registration actually opens tomorrow. You can email myself, which is joey@lakecitychamber.com if you're interested, or you can visit our website. It's lakecitychamber.com. It's $500 for a member. It's $750 for what we call a prospective member. I feel confident in saying it is worth every single dollar you invest into it.
And when does it kick off?
It kicks off August 24th with a welcome reception, laid back drinks, appetizers, and it ends October 12th with a graduation ceremony.
Awesome. Joey, I appreciate your time being here with us today, sharing your thoughts and your background and just your journey. People can learn from individuals like, Joey. Sometimes we think that we have to move to another state or another place to enhance our career and to grow. And you can do it in your own hometown and just stick to it and believe in yourself, and you can make that happen. And I'm looking forward to talking to you and your team on, I believe the first date that I'm going to be with you is hopefully August 31st. I have to check my calendar, but I think that's his first day, and then in September also. Looking forward to working with you.
Perfect. Thank you, Bob. I greatly appreciate it.
Coming to you live from Spurrier's Gridiron Grill, this has been Motivation U, the podcast, for our intern, Tammy, and for Evan Miller, who's hanging out in the restaurant. Appreciate it. Look forward to being with you next week. Motivation U, the podcast.